how to make your first platform. Check this platform out. You have to avoid this little spiky thing, and you know what? Let's just get started with it, because why not? All right, so we're going to create a 2D platformer type game in Godot. And to do so, we're going to utilize some free assets online from Kenny, and there is a couple others on itch. Links will be provided in the description. The first one is going to be here from Shonuki on itch. They have some really awesome music that we're going to take advantage of, specifically Dungeon Theme 1, if you're going to download from him. And then the other is the Pixel Platformer Asset Pack from Kenny. This is the same one that I used to build Booger the Game, and it does really great for some really quick demoing of some platformer games. So with that, we're going to download these assets and put them into a folder. There's also one more asset that I forgot to mention that we're going to go ahead and grab. We're going to go ahead and grab some coin sounds by Jalastrum. All the links for all of these are also going to be in the description. Okay, so once you import them into your folder from outside, Godot's going to go ahead and load these into the engine for you. And since we're working on a 2D game, you're going to want to go up here and click on 2D. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and click there. All right, so first things first, what I love to do is I love to immediately just jump into getting some of the world stuff set up here. Now we have kind of a blank canvas with our platformer here. So you can actually create nodes here. Godot uses nodes to build your video game. And so we can create a 2D node that will act as the root node for our scene. For now, think of these kind of like folders in a way. All nodes have special properties about them and they inherit other nodes. So you can access properties and attributes on them. Such as a node 2D, we can transform it so we can put it somewhere on the screen. We can also do rotation. If you want to rotate it, you can see it's kind of rotating here. You can also scale it. And if you change anything in Godot, one thing that's really cool that a lot of people probably won't talk about is the fact they have this little reset button. We're just going to click that. So we're just going to leave this alone. This node is going to be our root node for our level 1. And now that we have a level 1, our game kind of looks pretty boring. So let's go ahead and save our file. We'll just leave this the same here, level 1. If you use camel casing, so if you put a capital L, like maybe 1 is like a different like letter that's also capital to make a word, then Godot will recognize that and put that into the name when you go to save it. And it's very nice. So always use camel case to name your variables and your classes in Godot. So up here, we can go ahead and create a tile map. So here's all the different nodes in Godot. And in here, we can see that we have a node 2D, and there's a bunch of different stuff in here. You have animated sprites, you have audio stream players, that's for like playing sounds. It's important that you eventually get familiar with all of these, but for now, we're just not going to worry about 99% of them. What we're actually looking for is something very specific. It's called tilemap. And tilemap is just a way that we can build our world using some assets, which is what we want here. So we can import a tilemap. We're going to go ahead and click on create. And inside of our tile map, we're going to want to make a couple changes. So first things first, we need a tile set for our tile map. So Godot is just going to provide you a convenient way to just create a brand new tile set. You'll see now we have a grid to be working with here, and we can scroll in a little bit. And if we click on tile set here at the bottom, you have this window, which is going to allow you to create a tile set source. And now we can go to our assets and find the tile map conveniently labeled for us. And what we're looking for is our tile map packed file. So let's see what this one is. So what you'll see about tile map and tile map packed is tile map packed doesn't have all the extra space around it, which is something we don't want when we're importing this in. So we're just going to drag this on into here. And Godot's going to ask you, do you want it to create tiles on non-transparent texture regions? So Godot's going to automatically modify this for us. We're going to go ahead and say yes, and it will import automatically for you. Now what you'll see is that it actually is a little bit off. You'll see that like part of the 9 is cut off. None of these tiles actually line up where they're supposed to be. This is easily solvable. So you click on tile map. So our inspector tool will switch over. We're going to modify our tile set by clicking on it, and you'll see this tile set size. And how you know this, usually there will be like a text file. In this case, Kenny provides a text file, which should be in here. I think with the license or something, and you can just change the tile size to whatever they tell you. In this case, it's 18 by 18. So we'll just change these values. All right. And now we have, nope, that is definitely not the tile size. So it says here tile size is 18 by 18 with a 1 pixel, 1 pixel. Oh yes, okay, so if this happens to you as well, see this texture region size, we can just change this to 18 by 18 and everything should line up then. And now if we go back to 2D, select the tile map down here, select the pencil, and then make sure that you have select mode enabled. And now you should be able to draw a couple platforms for our world. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that real fast. So you can left click to place, but you can also delete holding down right click. And if you highlight multiple tiles, you can place multiple tiles at one time. All right, I think I have something I'm kind of happy with to get started with. Okay, now I'm going to keep my stuff organized and I'm going to call this tile map overworld. You can call it whatever you want. This is just for me to know what this is. And we can also go ahead and create a second tile set, and we're going to go ahead and create our background. So we're going to create another tile map node, so you can either click on recent, or you can go up here, click on the plus, and select tile map here. You can search it, you can go to node 2D. Doesn't matter how you bring it in, just click on create. And we will now create a tile map background. And we're going to place that in the background. Click on new tile set. And now we'll see this is the background that I want. So I'll select it, make sure this over here is selected, go down to tile set. We're just going to drag and drop again. Yes. And now we have some backgrounds. So now we can go back to tile map. We can select some of our tiles here, and we should just be able to paint these behind everything here. How cool is that? And so if I click and drag, it actually creates multiple, which is very nice. So now I'm just going to select some up here. This tool will allow you to draw a rectangle. So we can zoom out a little bit and draw a big rectangle. And now we have a sky. I can select some more. I can draw some more rectangles. I can also select this bottom area and draw some green. And now our game's really starting to come together. Control S to save, or go to scene and save. And now, if we click on this button here, we should be able to see a world, or at least a little bit of it. So what's happening here? So we see that we have this origin point here. This is our origin of our node, and the camera is technically being placed, we move this like right here. This is about what we're seeing for the most part, is it's actually placing the camera like right here. But we don't want that. We want the camera to actually follow a player around. So let's go ahead and create a player. So click on the plus up top. We're going to click on other node, type in character. We're going to create a character body 2D. We're going to double click to rename this to player. And now we have a physics body for a player called player. And so our player isn't really much of a player. He doesn't really have anything to him right now. So let's pick some assets to create our player with. Personally, I want an animated player, so I'm going to create a character that is animated. You can choose to not animate your character if you don't have anything prepared for that, but we have stuff inside of the tiles that are available to us for characters as a part of Kenny's asset pack. Very nice. So we're going to search for animated sprite 2D. Double click to add that. And so if you don't see me clicking on the plus here, it's because I'm actually hitting Control A, and I have realized that I'm doing that without really saying what that is. So you can actually Control A and add player. So we'll just add a animated sprite 2D node, or you can also use a sprite 2D. All this is going to do is just show us a sprite. It's not going to have anything to it. So we can click on animated sprite, create a new animation, so new sprite frame. And then we have down here, this is our animation, and it's currently empty. So let's find a player to stick into this animation. And if you double click on these, you can actually see them up here in the top right. So let's pick a character that we like. I think I want to be, how about this one? He kind of looks like he's wearing a VR headset, so he's kind of cute. So we're going to make sure we have this animated sprite 2D selected. And then we're just going to drag and drop his frame into here. This is a very simple way of adding characters into the system. Normally you'll click a button like right here to add sprites from a sheet, but since we don't have a sheet, we're not going to use this. So if we click play, we can actually see our character jumping around, but he's kind of blurry. So let's fix that. Godot uses some rendering techniques that are not very good for pixel art. So if we go to project settings, go to rendering textures, and here we have the default texture is linear. We want to set this to nearest because we're actually working with the actual pixels. And so this is just texture filtering. What it does is it blurs the lines so that way they look smoother, but for us we don't want that because we're working with the actual pixels here. Another thing too is we're not going to support multiple resolutions because for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to want to support one resolution. So I'm actually going to allow you to stretch your screen to the viewport. And so now when you full screen the game, it will just stretch my game across your entire screen, and I don't have to worry about a player seeing something they probably shouldn't because I didn't account for different screen sizes. This is going to make our life a lot easier for your first game. I recommend learning more about how to design for multiple viewport sizes, but for the sake of this, we're just going to keep it simple. We're just going to stretch it to viewport. Now our character's looking a lot more sharp. Look at him, he's so happy. And now if we hit the button right here, it kind of looks like AI, but it's not AI. I don't know why there's an A here. I think that means autoplay, but it does mean autoplay. So we'll just go ahead and click this button here, which means we want this to play when our game loads. And then we're also going to go ahead and attach a camera to our player. So that way when the player plays the game, the camera will follow him around. Let's type in camera and we'll find camera 2D in here. And what you'll see if you scroll all the way out is that our camera is actually quite big and our character's microscopic inside of it. So we're going to change the scale of our camera. And let's say this is like 2.5, which is much closer to the player. So the player is going to be much bigger and the world is also going to be bigger because now we're looking at a smaller section of the screen. We can then also enable some position smoothing, which is going to make our camera smooth. And we'll just leave all of that at the default. All right, now let's save our player. Control S to save. And let's go back to our level. I'm going to put our player into our game. So I'm going to put our player in the game. I'm going to send him up here on the platform. Save. Okay. Yeah, so let's go ahead and finish the player. So now the player's in the scene. Let's go ahead and create a script for him so that we can move him around. So there's a template here in Godot that we're going to make good use of. This is the basic 2D movement for the character, and then you can kind of just branch your script off of this. And this is going to use the default built-in controls in Godot to control your character, which is what we want. We want to be able to move the character using the default controls, and then we'll modify it for what we want later on. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Create. All right, this is going to do a couple things for us. This is going to give us a couple constants up here for speed, which this is a number that represents the speed in for which our character moves. Jump velocity. And what you'll realize is that jump velocity is actually negative because in computer graphics, the y-axis, unlike your math class, actually negative is up and positive is down. So when we jump, we want to jump negative, so that way we can go upwards. And here is physics process. So we can actually run something on every single frame using physics process here. And so to make this frame per time true, there's a value called delta that I am not as familiar with. However, basically what this does is that if you're lagging, you're going to jump at the same height as everyone else because it makes the frames per second the same from computer to computer. I would definitely do some reading on the documentation for Delta to get more familiar with it. However, that is not something that we're going to cover here. So we can go ahead and add some gravity. So if the player is not on floor, then he's actually, his velocity y is going to be equal to the gravity times the delta. And then if player presses the UI accept button, which is actually spacebar by default, then, and he is on the floor, then we're actually going to set his velocity to the jump value. And then as a direction, there's two different directions. As a good practice, you should definitely replace UI actions with custom actions, and we most definitely can do that. But as far as direction goes, we'll move towards a direction, otherwise we're just slowing down and stopping. And so with this, we should be able to play our game now. So let's go back to level 1. We can click on Run Scene. And what you'll see is our player is actually going to fall through the floor. And this is because our player does not have a collision shape, and neither does our tile map. So what is a collision? Collision is basically what happens when two things collide, of course. So what we want is we want him to collide with this tile underneath of him. So we're going to first set that one up, and then we're going to go to the player and set that one up. So for our tiles that we want the player to be able to collide with, we have to set that up in our tile set. So we'll click on our overworld, we'll click on our tile set, let's go to paint. We're going to make this a little bit bigger. We're going to select our physics layer, which is not here. So we'll have to make one. So we'll select our overworld over here, open up tile set, go down to physics layers. We're just going to go and add one, which is going to be collision layer 1, mask 1 is fine. And now you should have one inside physics. Now we're going to highlight all of these tiles that the player should be able to collide with, which would technically just be like a floor or a wall, just something you don't want him to go through. So like when he steps on this, should he go through it? If the answer is yes, then don't highlight it. If the answer is no, then go ahead and highlight it. Let's say, for example, you wanted the player to be able to walk on top of this fence here. He would be technically walking on air here because this fence is all the way down here. So to change that, we can click on the tile we want, and then we can lower down these two values. And now, if we paint it over again, now there is the collision where the player would walk on top of that. You want to avoid weird shapes like this, like if I go down here and do this, because then that means the player could potentially get stuck in this little groove, and we don't want that. So it's best to just keep it simple, unless you need to be getting in between that for any reason at all. Just make it easier on you. Just do an invisible box like that. For this one, we can basically do the same thing, highlight, and we can just drag up and click again. So let's say you accidentally clicked on something that you didn't want to collide with, like this tree. So now this tree is highlighted, but actually we didn't want them to collide with it. We wanted it to be a background prop instead. We can actually hit C on our keyboard and click on the tree again, and see it actually gets rid of the physics layer. Or you can hit F and it makes this entire box a collision, and now everything I paint over top of is all collisions. C again, we can delete that. So over here, here's some clouds. I want to collide with the clouds. Maybe this cloud, I want to be able to not have to worry about that bottom section. That's fine. Or you can even do some of these trees if you want to use those. Just go wild, you know, modify all of the physics to your liking. And then once you're done, the world should be fine. We'll have to go back to our player now because our player is still going to fall through the world. So let's go to player. And if you see this little triangle, it's going to tell you that there is no collision shape, so he can't collide with anything. Let's fix that. Let's go to the plus or hit Control A, look for collision shape 2D. We're going to click on create. And I'm going to zoom in a bit so we can get really precise with this. I'm going to click on a new shape, rectangle, and we're just going to go ahead and put this at his feet. And the reason we put it at his feet and not the whole body is because otherwise you're going to hit your head way before you actually hit your head. So if that's kind of where you should collide with, is with the head, then maybe you do want it for the whole body. But for me, I want the player to be able to jump up. Maybe he kind of overlaps a little bit because he jumped in front of something. It's completely your preference on how you want to handle your collisions. But for me, I just want to collide with his feet like this. So that way now he runs around and he can collide with the floor. So let's collide with the floor. Sweet. So now what you'll realize pretty quickly is that when we do jump off the edge, we don't respawn. And that's not very fun, because what if I'm doing some parkour and maybe I messed up and I fell off the edge? We want to implement a respawn system. So let's figure out a way to kill Bob here, because this is Bob v2. If you've watched my last video about my platformer I created on a single weekend, you'll know that we killed Bob quite a bit and that Bobs are going to fight. So we have to be able to kill Bob, because this Bob has to be able to die. Let's implement a new way to respawn Bob every time he jumps into the void. And then we'll figure out how to flag that and maybe penalize him for jumping into the void. Because Bob, you really shouldn't be jumping into the void. So let's create a new node on our level. We're going to create what's called an area. And while this area doesn't currently have a shape, this is just a shapeless area. So let's go ahead and just add a shape to this. We're going to call this collision shape 2D. And we're actually going to take good use of this new world boundary shape 2D. And what this is going to do for us is that now this line stretches for infinity, which is exactly what we want. So we're just going to pull this down. And now every time he jumps down and falls, he's going to hit this area, which is infinitely long, and he'll trigger some piece of code, which we haven't wrote yet. So far, we haven't written any code really, and this is going to be the part where we're going to start getting our hands dirty a little bit with some GDScript. So let's call this area 2D fell to death area so that we can have dying version 1. We're going to attach a new script. Pick a file place to save your script. I'm just going to leave this in the base folder. Make sure you organize your projects, especially if these are going to be large. And now we can start writing a script for this. So I'm going to go ahead and save my script. Let's click on fell to death area, and we're going to take a look at this node tab. And what's really cool about this node tab is there's a thing called signals in Godot. So when a signal is triggered, it's because something has happened. And when something happens, we can signal to our code to do something. These signals, you can import them into other areas of your code. So for this one, what we want is a body entered 2D, which is when a physics body, such as a player or a tile map, is detected and it runs past this barrier. So if we double click this body entered, we can actually connect it to this area here, because that's where we want to connect our script, and click on connect. And what you'll see immediately is it creates us a function with an underline here that says on body entered. So that part is almost plain English when a body enters, but this little underscore here is pretty significant, because what that also tells us is that this is a function that the system created. This is usually the system default naming schema. You can follow naming your functions that way as well. I've seen people do it. However, I'm not going to be naming my functions that way, so I can tell the difference between Godot functions and my functions, which are really not all that different if you think about it. So for now, let's go ahead and just print a message. We're going to say, kill Bob. This video is definitely getting taken down. And then we can go ahead and hit play. And pay attention to this debug window behind my game. I'm going to jump off the edge, and it says kill Bob, which is good. That's what we want. So now let's work on respawning Bob. So body is technically Bob as he falls through, because Bob is technically just a body. He fell, and now there's a physics body or a tile map, either or. In our case, it's a physics body that has fell into the zone, and we want to be able to do something with it. So here it is. This is the body that it detected. We want to respawn him at his current point. So we're just going to do that very simply. We're going to go back to 2D. We're going to find out exactly where Bob is. So I'm going to hit Q, which is for my select mode. I'm going to click on him, and I'm going to go to Inspector and Transform, and see that he's at 6, -12. Now we can click on this little script icon right here to get back to our script very quickly. So we're going to make note of that. I'm going to put a comment, which is a hashtag here. We can put 6, -12. These are the coordinates of Bob. And so to do a coordinate, we can create what's called a vector. So we can do a vector 2, which is just for our grid, and we can go ahead and place him where that vector is. So to do that, we're going to say body.global position, because we're not moving him locally. We're going to be moving his global position, as far as like globally in the level, is equal to a vector 2 of 6 and -12. I'm going to save this. And now, when we jump off the edge, Bob now respawns. There's no penalty to currently jumping off the edge, but we can jump off the edge as much as we want now, and we're gonna be okay. Or at least Bob is just gonna die infinitely. So our level here is kind of feeling a little boring. See, we have a way for Bob to die, but now there's nothing for us to really do. So let's implement a coin system. Let's make Bob a couple coins to pick up. So we're gonna click on plus, and we're actually going to create another node here. So by clicking on other node, and we actually want another area 2D because this is an area that Bob should enter, which is a coin area, and then he'll pick up the coin with some code. So let's click on create. We're going to rename this to coin. So that way this area is called coin. We know what it is. Let's give coin a sprite. I'm going to hit F, which centers my screen, zoom in a little bit. Control A, which opens up this menu. We're going to look for a animated sprite 2D. If you downloaded the pack, there should also be inside of our tiles section here, there should be a coin. Number 151, mark my words. We're going to click on animated sprite 2D, go to animation, new sprite frames, just the same thing we did last time. And now we're going to autoplay this on load. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see this animate. We can click on play if we like to see it rotate. Look at that, we already have a coin. How easy is that? And now we're going to go back up the coin and click on plus, or I'm just going to control A. We're going to create a collision shape because Bob needs to be able to walk onto our coin, and we're going to create a circle shape 2D. I'm going to increase the border just barely, so that way it's a little forgiving, or let's see, I'm just going to do this size. This size looks good to me. And now we can go ahead and hit Control S. That's going to save. I'm going to save my coin to the folder. Again, make sure you follow your schema for however you want to organize. I'm going to return to level 1. And now I'm going to use this filter here. I'm going to search for coin. And now we can drag our coins into our level. I'm just going to drag 1 for now, so we can see our coin load in. And now if we hit play, we should see our coin. But when we jump on our coin, nothing happens. So let's make something happen. Let's close out of our game. Let's go back to coin. And now we're going to attach a script to coin because something should happen when this coin is picked up. So let's click on create, attach script to the coin right there. Now we're going to say, so actually what we're going to do here is we're going to click on coin. We're going to go to node, body entered, same thing as last time. Select the script that you want to connect it to. And now when the body enters, something should execute in the script. Let's clean this up a little bit. There we go. So we're going to say print you picked up a coin. And then we're going to run a method called queueFree. What this is going to do is this is going to delete the coin from the world. So now when I go to level 1 and I click on play, what happened here? So what happened here is that our coin is currently on layer 1. Remember how we assigned a collision layer and we said that when a body enters that a tile map could also interact? If you take a look here, it is indeed colliding with our tile map. So we're going to have to fix this problem. So if we go to coin, go to inspector, collision, and you'll see that we have layer. This is the layer that the object is inside of. And then we have mask. And this is when it scans for a collision. So we're actually just going to put this on mask 2 and just take off layer. And we're going to add player for collision into layer 2. I'm going to save that. And now we should be able to load in and pick up our coin. Look at that. Now we picked up a coin. Great. Now let's show a way that we can also display the amount of coins in the user's HUD when they pick up something. So I'm going to go back to player. And this is a very messy way to implement this, and you should definitely look into other ways. But for the sake of simplicity and for mocking this up, we're going to attach the UI all to the player, so that way we can just have him with the camera that follows around with the UI. So I'm going to just attach a new canvas. Here we go, new canvas layer. which is independently rendered of other objects within the scene. I'm going to click on create. And if I scroll out a little bit, there should be a box. Yep. So this is our box for our interface. And we can go ahead and click on plus or Control A again. And we're going to create a control node in here for organization. And we're going to call this displayed HUD. This way we know that we're displaying like coins and health inside of this node. And for our canvas layer here, we'll just rename this to UI. So this is our player's user interface, and then we'll have HUD here. We're going to make HUD. If we click on this little drop down here, we can make it take up the entire screen. And then if we add another node to this, inside of the control node section, you should see that there's different control nodes. Control nodes just display inputs and basic controls to the player. It's basically just for most of your GUI stuff. But what you'll see is that there's actually a label in here. And if we click on label, you'll see that we have a new label here in the corner. And we can actually say your coins. And we're going to put this in some big letters. So click on the scale tool here. We're going to scale this up real big. And then we're going to rename this label your coins label. And I'm going to take this label, Control D to duplicate, W to select the movement tool. I'm going to drag this off here to the side using this red arrow. And then now we start out with 0 coins. And if we save and we click on play, you can see that now we have coins up here in the corner. However, when we collect our coin, we want it to display in the corner. And currently it does not. It just deletes from the world, which is kind of useless. So let's go back to coin and let's create what's called a signal, because we want to signal to the game that we have just picked up a coin. So what we'll end up doing here is we're going to do a little bit more advanced of a technique, and we're going to use a singleton, which will store all of the information for the game score. And then we'll import that into the player, and we'll use that within the player. Super simple, just follow along. We're going to create a new signal here using the signal keyword. We're going to call this signal coin picked up. Remember the signals inside of the node tab? We're creating one of those inside of here, which is what this is. So this is coin picked up signal. And then when you pick up a coin, we're just going to add a line before we delete it and say coin picked up dot emit, because now we want to emit a signal that we picked up a coin. Very simple. If we clear out our filter down here, I'm going to shrink everything down. But if we, there we go. If we right click here, we can create a new script. I'm going to call this game manager. And so this is what I'm going to use in order to manage the game score. Copy that name or memorize what that is. Hit create. Go down to game manager. And I'm actually going to create a new variable. I'm going to call this coins picked up. And then I'm going to say equals 0. In Godot 4, you're able to go ahead and automatically assign the type of this variable, so that way we know for sure it's a number by just going before this equal sign and hitting this colon, but it is not necessary. You don't need to put that there, but it does help out when you're trying to say that coins picked up might be equal to a string later on. Like if I say coins equals hello, then this is actually bad, and Godot's going to recognize that, or it might not recognize it here. Here we go. It should recognize it here because this is a string and we only accept numbers, because the amount of coins should always be a number and not a string of letters. So now we can go back to our player script. And if we click on script here, and remember that physics process runs on every frame. Well, actually, you can also update your HUD using the same method. So on every single frame, we're going to display the most up-to-date amount of coins that you have. So if we go here, we can just rename this. This is, if you remember correctly, this is the 0 for our coins. So I'm going to say collected coins label. And I'm actually going to go ahead and right-click and make this one unique, which means that this is a unique name. We're not going to create more of these. It's better for, from what I understand, it's better for performance, and it also makes your life really easy because you can just put a % and the name and reference this node within the tree. So if we go here to player, we're going to say %coins collected label is actually equal to game manager dot coins collected. Or let's go back to game manager here. It's not coins collected, it's coins picked up. There we go. And make sure that we set the text value. And how do we know what to set here, right? Because this is quite a bit. Or what is our problem here? Game manager is not declared in the current scope. Okay, so currently game manager is not imported, but we're going to get to that here in just a second. So what is here? How do we know to put text? If we click on coins collected label, and inside of our inspector, you'll see this little property here that we're modifying called text. And all these different properties are actually editable within your script. So as long as you reference them, so you can drag and drop them in like that, and you can reference them like that. So if I want to do something with the HUD, I can drop it in here, right? And then you can say dot, and you can modify a property on them. You get IntelliSense, but there's a lot of options here. I find that it's easier to just look over here in the inspector, find the one that I want, like let's say I want to enable clip text, hover over top of it, and you'll see the name of the property called like clip_text. And we can see that's on and off, and it's a checkbox, which means true or false. So you can say clip_text equals true, and then that would set the clip text to be true when this piece of code runs. However, text can also only be set to a string. Even though we typed in a number here, this is still technically, in the eyes of the computer, it's still kind of a letter. So we need to make sure that our coins picked up is converted properly to a string. So we can say str, and we can put our value here, which is just going to cast this value to a string. And basically it's just converting it for you. No need to stress. So now our number is now a word. In order to fix this error, where it's not currently declared in the current scope, is we need to add our singleton. So if we go to project settings, and go to auto load, you can click on this little folder here, select our game manager script, and make sure you click on add. I always forget to click on add. But now that's automatically imported when we start our game, and that's available inside of all of our files. So this error should go away. Save, let's come back. There we go. You might need to click away and come back in order to get it to disappear. So now that should equal coins picked up. Now, in order to update that value when we pick up this coin, we have to write some additional code for when the coin signal emits that it was picked up, we add to that value because we want to continue to add to it as they pick up more and more coins. So what we can do is we can go to our level and we can create a script for our level. So now on level, we're just going to delete everything here actually. We don't need any of that. And we have a blank script for our level. And if we go to coin, remember that signal we created earlier? If we go underneath node, look at that, it's right here. We can double click on it, select level, and this is kind of a funny name, on coin, coin picked up. And that's because it's named coin and our coin picked up is the name of the signal. I don't want to name it that, so I'm just going to rename this here a little bit. I'm going to delete one of these coins. So now it says on coin picked up and connect that to level 1. So now when a coin is picked up on level 1, this piece of code will run. And now I want to call to game manager dot coins collected or coins picked up because that was the name of our variable up here. On coins picked up plus equals, so we're going to add 1. We can delete this pass function. And now we can save. And now when we pick up the coin, it should update our text on our screen. And what's great is now that we've wrote that piece of code, we don't have to write that code again. We can actually move our coin. So I'm going to select our move tool. I'm going to move our coin over here. And because this is going to get messy in our tree really quickly, I'm going to create a new node, a node 2D. And I'm going to call this one coins. Remember how I said these can be used as folders? We can keep it organized by just creating one here. I'm going to rename coin to coin1, and Godot is going to recognize that this is coin1. So when I do Control D for duplicate, it names it coin2, and when I do it again, it's going to be coin3. So we can just drag these out. So now we have 5 coins. Godot automatically labels them for me. When I save my game and I load it, now I can collect all 5 coins, and it displays in the corner of my screen. Our world is kind of boring here as well, so let's add an enemy that might attack me if I try to collect the coins. So let's add a new node. So we're going to click on the top plus icon here to create a new one. And for our enemy, I'm just going to create a body, so a rigid body, which is just a body that can be moved by physics. And I'm just going to call it enemy. You can call him whatever you want. You can call him Pete. I can go up here. I can Control A to add. I want a animated sprite 2D. And so if I drop down assets and I go to characters, let's look for a enemy. I like this one. So if we go to inspector, this is the one I'm going to use for my enemy because he looks very cool. So I'm going to click on animated sprite 2D, animation. You know the process. Let's go through here. So actually pause the video and see if you can do this on your own, and then come back and do it with me. So we're just going to drag this in. And so now if we scroll in, our little guy is going to shake. Oh yeah. Autoplay. Save. Let's add a collision shape so that way when our enemy touches our player, we can actually do something to him. So we're actually going to create a new box for our enemy here. And this box is going to be for the enemy's collision with the world, because now he's the physics body. And let's go ahead and label our layers. So let's edit layer names from this little drop down. Layer 1, if we remember, that was interaction with the world. Layer 2 was interaction with coins. And layer 3 is going to be the layer where anything that hurts. And we're going to go ahead and click on close. So now, and let's just go ahead and add our enemy in here. And let's see what he can do. Oh. That's going to be for our collision. And now we need a hurt zone. So let's add an area 2D. We're going to call this hurt region. And we're going to add a collision shape to that. And so when we add our collision shape for hurt, we can just say that when you touch him at all, you're actually going to get hurt by his spike, because his spike's pretty pointy. Click on hurt region, collision, layer 3. And so when you open up your script here, you should see that hurt region. We can then click on that and have a body entered. So when our body enters into that region where we should hurt the player, then we can go ahead and say, here's our enemy, connect. So this is on hurt region entered. We're just going to print hurt player. And now let's go back to level 1 and let's test our scene. So we should see hurt player, but why are we not seeing that? And that's because our player is not currently on the right layer to receive that. So let's go back to player. He should also be on layer 3 because layer 3 hurts him. Let's go back to level 1. And now when I touch him, he hurts me. Yes, we want to hurt our player. And we're picking up coins. That's good. Okay. Now let's hurt the player. So on player, we're going to make our own function for hurting the player. So let's say function hurt player. Let's add a function here that's going to hurt our player. So when we hurt the player, we just want him to like jump in pain because that sounds awesome. So let's say our velocity dot y is actually going to be plus equals our jump velocity. So then he is just going to jump when we call this method on him, and then we'll decrease his health. But currently our player doesn't have any health. So let's create some health for our player. We're going to call this var health. And then we're going to say our player has 3 health. So let's say hurt player health minus equals 1. So that way we take away 1 health. And then we're going to go ahead and do print. You have, we're going to say %s, which is going to be a placeholder. %s health left. And we're going to say %sign, and we're going to say health. And so basically this is just a placeholder here, and we can code a variable into our string for health using the %sign. Really cool. So then we can also go back to enemy, and we can say when we want to hurt the player, if body has method, which means does body have a function called this, and we want to say if the body has a function called hurt player, then we want a body.hurt player. So now we're checking to make sure that this exists on whatever it collided with, which would be our player right here. And we're going to say you have X amount of health left. Let's go test this. Look at that. Now we have 0 health left, -1, -2. So every time we touch him like that, we're taking away some health. Let's also take away some health when we jump into the void, because honestly, jumping into the void should also hurt. Let's go over here. We can say the same thing as what we did on the enemy. So let's just go over here. Let's copy that. So then when we respawn him as well, we're going to say if they have the method hurt player, then let's hurt the player. And then now we can hurt the player as much as we want. But currently there's no way for Bob to see how much health he has left. So let's add some hearts into our displayed HUD here. Let's add some hearts. So what we'll do is we'll go looking through our tiles again. And what we're looking for here is we're just going to look for this heart. I like this one, so I'm going to drag this in. I'm going to move this into our HUD. I'm going to call this heart 1. I'm also going to make this unique so that we can access it from our code. I'm going to hit S to scale. I'm going to drag this heart up, make it nice and big. I'm going to put our heart underneath of here, duplicate this 2 more times. And now we have 3 hearts. Let's go back to our player script. And let's say for our health, for whenever we hurt our player, let's update the HUD as well. So we can say match, which is basically it's a switch in case statement in other languages, which basically means we're just trying to match whatever this is. So we're going to say match our health. So when our health matches one of these values, so when it matches 2, we want our heart 3 to be hidden. So we're just going to say .hide. And when it is 1, we want heart 2 to be hidden. Otherwise, we're going to say underscore, which means if this is not 2 and our health is not 1, then we also want heart 3 to hide. And actually, I just realized these should be in reverse order because we want them to reverse the order and for which they disappear. So heart 3 disappears first, heart 2, and then heart 1. Now, when we go to playtest our game, we should be able to jump in the void. We lose a heart. And when we come over here and we touch our enemy, we kind of get hurt again, and now all our hearts are gone. But currently there's no way to actually die, so let's add dying v2. So let's go back to player, and let's create a death screen. So that way we can let the person know that, hey, you died. Let's go to our UI. We're going to create a new control node. I'm going to call this one death screen. So I want to attach this to my camera. So we're going to say on our death screen, we're just going to have a label. Maybe I also want like a colored rectangle. So we're going to say color rect. This is just basically a rectangle that displays a solid color. We can actually scale death screen by clicking the button, scale it to full. Go to colored rectangle, go up here, scale that to full. We can go to this, we can make it black, or actually I'm going to do red, And this is our alpha channel. So how transparent is it? I'm just going to make this like super transparent, just enough to tint the screen. And then up here for our label, drag this below. And then W, or click the movement key. I'm going to put this in about the center. But what we can actually do is we can make use of some of these other nodes in here underneath of control. We can do a box container, put our label in the box container, say that box container should center. And then for our label, since it is now in the center, we can put you died. So now you died is perfectly centered on the screen. Underneath theme overrides, you can modify your color of your font, your constants, such as like your offset, your outline. But what I want here is like font size. Feel free to play around with all of this. You can reset anything easily with this reset button. I'm just gonna do like 95 pixels. Like I just want this to be in your face. You died. I want to let you know that. And so now we'll go up here to player. And we're going to put a new function for kill player. So this function should get called when we want to kill the player, like entirely. So then what we'll say now is we'll say that we want this death screen here to show. So we can accomplish that by dragging it in. We can say .show. Or if you remember what I said about constants, we don't really need to do any of this here. We can just right click, access this unique name. And we can just say %deathScreen because there's only one death screen and we don't have to reference it in any other way. .show. We can take our displayed HUD and hide that because we don't want to display your coins anymore. You're kind of dead. And then we can just leave it at that. So then now when our health is 0, which would be this last case, we can actually just call to kill player. Which actually this doesn't even matter at this point because this is just going to get hidden, but you understand the point of it. So when I click on play on level 1, let's go ahead and die. So let's go back to player. Make sure that you hide your death screen so that way the player does not see that nasty message. Go back to level 1, play the level. Let's get hurt. So now I died. And we can do like some cool animations, but I'll leave that up to you. But you see this message that tells me that I died, but nothing's happening. I want to respawn. I want to try this level again. So let's implement a respawn timer. So to do so, we can go to our player and we can add a timer. And this timer, we can actually call some code when it times out. So we want to change this name here to respawn timer. And we actually want to do one more thing to this. We want to make this a one-shot so it doesn't loop, because by default they loop. We're going to say like 2.5 seconds. I don't want this to play very long. And then we'll go back to our player, go to our script, click on respawn timer, node, double click timeout, connect that to player. And now when we want to respawn, let's just go ahead and do get tree, just getting the root node tree. So this, when you call get tree, it returns the scene tree that contains this node, and if this node is not inside the tree, then it's going to cause some issues. But this node is indeed inside the tree because it is the player. And we're actually just going to change scene to file. And you see, autocomplete's just going to help us here. We're just going to load level 1 again. So when we display kill player, we want to start this timer. So let's just drag and drop this in here and say .start. So now we're starting the timer. Let's play this again. Hurt, hurt, dead. Okay, and now we respawn and all the coins are here again. Another thing too is that if I'm dead, I don't want to continuously get hurt. So let's go ahead and just return. So if health is less than or equal to 0, let's just go ahead and return. So basically this is just going to stop code from running when we run into stuff again. after we're already dead. Otherwise, if we're still alive, we want to do stuff. And another thing too, the player shouldn't be able to move while they're dead. So let's go ahead and add another line up here and disable the controls. So if health is less than or equal to 0, right? Because health can be all the way down to 0, but what if they accidentally touch a spike and it decreases? Or if something runs twice, I always just say less than or equal, which is this sign right here. And we can say return. And return's just going to stop all code execution right there for this entire block. And the rest of this is not going to run. So now we can save. And let's go to level 1 and let's try that out. So now my controls should be disabled when I die. So 1, 2, 3, and I can't move, nothing happens. Awesome. 1, 2, 3, I die, I can't move. All right, now let's add some additional features into our game. Our enemy here is standing on our coins, which is kind of annoying, and also I want to add some challenge and maybe get him to move. So we could write a script that would move him back and forth, but instead of doing that, let's do it a much easier way using animation players. So if we go to our level 1 and we Control A to add, let's look for animation player. And so with the animation player, it kind of works like the sprite, except for now we can create a new animation. I'm going to call this just like move enemies. And maybe this is a few seconds long. Maybe this is 4 seconds long, and I'm just going to create a loop where he walks back and forth. So let's take our enemy here. Let's go to inspector, and what you'll see now is there's these little keys here on the side. And underneath of the transform tab for his position, we'll see there's a key here. And if we click it, it'll say, oh, do you want to create a reset for this? Sure, let's create a reset. And now there's a spot here for enemy for his position. Let's go forward in time. And let's move our enemy. So I want him to move all the way over here. And then after that, I want him to move all the way, say 2.5 seconds. I want him to move all the way over here. All the way to the right. And I'll click on the key again. And then for the 4th second, I just want to duplicate the first frame. So that way we get a nice loop. Let's go over here. Right click. So if you right click that, it should be able to duplicate, and that's going to duplicate to where we're currently selected at in time. Now if we hit play, he's going to move. He kind of moves fast, and that's pretty cool. However, gravity is also going to apply to him. So let's move him down a little bit. And we will adjust that. Let's add that keyframe there. So now he should move back and forth. And you can adjust these around and get him to do as you want. And now if I hit save, hit this autoplay button, and also hit this button to loop it. So that way our animation plays over and over and over. So now it's a perfect game loop. And now look at our enemy. He now is dodgeable. And we can jump over top of him. We can also get hurt by him. So now he's going to hurt us if we stand still, and then we're going to die. And that is how we can create a basic core loop on gameplay. And you can see how very quickly you can start building out a level. You can add flying enemies. So instead of adding a body here for the player, or I meant the enemy. So instead of adding a rigid body for the enemy, maybe if your enemy should fly, you would want to do something like an area 2D node where it doesn't actually have physics applied to it, so it doesn't have gravity. And then you can just do something like that. Or you can also turn off gravity scale, I'm pretty sure. So now if we hit play on this, he shouldn't fall. Yeah, so you can actually just use the same thing here. You can just like turn off gravity for him. So now he can collide with the player. He has a region for which he can hurt the player. And if this is too hard to see, then you can always just click here, and you can also, pro tip, change the color. So now you can see there's like this little blue thing inside of there a little bit, and then you have the red, and the red's what hurts the player. So now let's also implement some other really cool features into here. let's say we wanted to add spikes into our world. All right, so because of the way that we have this design, let's add some spikes. Let's add some spikes in here. Let's do a area 2D with a sprite here for our spikes. Let's actually just add that in there like this. Let's say sprite 2D because spikes don't have movement here. And let's just drag and drop this in. Hit F, zoom in, drag this above the line, add a collision area. Let's go over here, collision. This is going to mask on layer 3. New rectangle shape. This is when the player touches these spikes. Save, let's rename this to spikes. Let's save that as spikes. Let's add a script to it. And we'll say when a body enters our area for spikes, and just copy the same code from the enemy. If they have something in here, then hurt them. Go back to our scene. Let's add spikes. It's like maybe you have to land here like on the edge. We can add some spikes into our world. There's a way that you can actually paint these into your tile map as well, but we're just going to use the same method that we've used for the enemy here. You might see in other tutorials, they might actually add like a hurt box onto the player so when the player touches something, and that might be like a better way to do it. But because of the way that we've done it here, we can just create some spikes, drag them in, it's no big deal. So let's go ahead and touch these spikes. Yep, ouch, ouch, and ouch. Awesome. Perhaps maybe even like if we wanted these spikes to be collidable, then we could add some sort of like physics body that instead of like an area, they could be like a static body and you can run into them and you can actually collide with them. But I think for the sake of what I need here, an area is perfectly fine. So here's a bonus tip for those of you who on Discord have hit me up and asked me about how to do the signs when you walked past them. Like in Booger, you can actually see like some text above them. And so actually, I'm going to show you a pretty easy way to do it using the same method as what we did here in the spikes. So let's create another area 2D node. We're going to call this sign area. And so when the player walks past the sign area, maybe we want to display them a message. So let's add a new sprite. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, this one looks great. Okay, let's use this one in place for our sprite. So let's drag this into our texture. Now we have a sign. Let's drag it above the line. And then let's add a collision shape so that way we know what activation region for this sign. So we're just going to do like a rectangle. So when the player gets close to the sign, I just want to show them a message like above it maybe. Yeah, that looks fine to me. And inside of here, we can add like a label. And I'm going to show you how to do something really cool with this label. We're going to say hello world just as some sample text. I'm going to scale this down to where I want it. Yeah, that kind of looks fine. Let's enable some text wrapping here. So we're actually going to say I want to align this to center. And then auto wrap with word, or you can select smart, whichever one you want. So now when I write a really long message, it's going to wrap. If I pick the selection tool, you can actually drag and say what area or your text. So like that looks good. And then we can basically also say the vertical alignment should be centered. So now if I have a really, really long I want to say to you, here it is, right? Or something like that. Then we can, you know, you can just go over here, you can say like all types of different settings. But as far as like what I want to add into here, I think I'm not going to want to do more than 2 lines personally. You can always make this like longer if the box really needs it. This is going to end up getting centered. So we can say hello world as far as our example goes. Save the sign area. Create a new script. You can now do export var sign text. So this is actually going to be a text variable. And so we want to say that this is actually type of string, which is important for typing. And we're going to call a ready function here. So when this node is loaded, we want to run this script here. So we're just going to say that our label dot text is equal to sign text. And we also want to attach some signals in here. So when our body enters, and we also want one in here for when our body exits. So when the body enters, I want to show the label. Otherwise, I want to hide the label. And also when the node loads in, I don't want to show the text on the sign, so let's just go ahead and hide that immediately. You can also just uncheck this box here, and that should also work. So we can go ahead and just eliminate that line of code. So the sign is very simple. And so now in our level design, when we're choosing to show it to the player, we can just say, let's add a sign. So we'll add our sign area into here. Maybe we want to show them a message here at the end. So we'll get a sign area. And now if you look at inspector, we have this little area here that we can write some message. We can say, you made it to the end. Save that. And let's make it to the end. So now we want to display this to the player. Let's make sure that we're only displaying that when the player enters the region. So we're actually going to put that on the same collision as the coins. So now only the player who can pick up the coins can see the sign. There we go. You made it to the end, and our sign text will actually show. And this is reusable now, so now you can edit your own text and throw your own text into there. And so now that you have all of the necessary resources to do that, let's just add some final touches to the game, like some sound. So to add some music to our level, we can just go over here and we can put audio stream player. And basically we can put autoplay turned on. And for our song, if you remember from earlier, we downloaded some sounds. So Dungeon 1 theme is the one that I like for my level. And then we can also make sure that looping is turned on. So if you import a song that doesn't have proper looping enabled, then we can also just artificially loop it. So if we go up here to node, we can say that when it's finished, we can just simply play it again. Great, okay. And now I want to make picking up coins sound satisfying. But one thing that's immediately going to become a problem is when we pick up the coins, Q3 is actually going to kill the sounds as well. Because when we delete it from the world, that's where the sound is coming from. So we're going to fix all of this. So we're going to create a new variable for each coin called picked up. And this is just going to be set to false. If the coin is picked up, then we're just going to return. We're not going to do anything because it was already picked up beforehand. Audio stream player 2D. Go to inspector. And this is drag in our coin sound. And then we'll go to node. And when it's done, connect that. And we're actually just going to put the delete in here. We never actually said to do anything here when we pick up a coin. So let's actually say picked up is equal to true. So that way we no longer infinitely pick them up forever. And what we're also going to do is cue in the sound that we want to play. So you remember from earlier, we can play an audio player by just calling play. We can also emit that we picked up a coin. And then when that audio player is done, we're going to call just to delete it. Also, one more thing, we want to make sure that we hide the coin. You can also call self.hide, but you don't need to type that here because we can just type hide and it refers to the coin because that's where the script is attached. All right. One more game-breaking bug that we have here is that when our player respawns, because everything just died, we need to reset our coins too. So before we load into the new level, let's say game manager, the coins picked up is equal to 0. We could technically also just do something entirely different here. We can just say function reset game, so we can keep it scoped properly. And then we can say, go to player here, game manager.reset game. And this is just going to reset all of our scores that we currently have inside of game manager. And you could add like diamonds and other pickup items inside of here. And then just as easily as we added it to the player, you can display them in the level or in the UI or wherever you want because game manager is imported in everything since that we auto-loaded the script. And now we have a fully playable game. And you can click on the play button here. This will set the current scene as the default scene, or you could end up creating a main menu for your game. With that, I think we're going to call it a wrap for this specific tutorial. We've gone over a lot. We've gone over how to create your signs, how to create your spikes, how to create enemies, how to use animation players. We displayed hearts on the screen. We've created HUD. We've gone over some of the control nodes. And you can basically create your own platformer game using this. And when you want to load into a new level, you can do exactly what we did with the player. You can just go down here and call this function here with a different file for each level. So you can create level 2, level 3, so you can create like an area. And when you reach the end of level 1, maybe you go to level 2. And maybe level 2 has a different game manager coins. And when you pick them up, maybe your level here for your script, maybe it adds them to like a level 2 coins picked up. And you can just detect like how many coins you picked up per level 1, how many coins per level 2. And you can end up creating a game with all of these assets here. So I'm going to call that a wrap for today. And we can definitely continue working on this if this is something you guys want to continue to progress. Or we can just go into other types of Godot tutorials. But I just wanted to kind of cover some of the basics of creating your first platformer. And now we're here. So let's go get some coffee.